Good.
This film is unbelievable. It's an incredible piece of art. I just was blown away from the very opening of the film. I'm
Yeah.
curious, Tamara
It did.
Faye's approach to this adaptation. How did that work? Because it's such a unique take on what the original novel was about. Did she start this first, and then you came to her, or who started this?
The book was sent to me. It was in the same vein as the Book of Negroes. I don't know if you've read Lawrence Hill's The Book of Negroes, but it's a similar time period, similar history. As a filmmaker, I wasn't that interested in kind of revisiting that world, but I was really interested in the story. And and I approached Tamara because we had made one other film together, Lie with Me, and Tamara writes young women very well. Ask her to collaborate with me on the script, and just try to find a language, try to find a genre to help to kind of filter this story through. And we came up with the kind of in a way a kind of fairy tale, a dark fairy tale, if you will, of these two young princes, what we call a tale of two princesses, and to kind of imbue the story with a aesthetic that was timeless and that was, in a way, as an artist member, you're trying to puzzle out. Hopefully, it doesn't confuse the audience, but you're once you kind of surrender to the film, you say, oh, I get, the film is speaking about the past through the allegory of these two young women.
I love the approach of the idea that this is a fable because it feels very much like maybe a really old fashioned fairy tale where it's obviously the dark undertones play such a huge part of this storytelling. Did you like going into this? Obviously, the tone comes out kind of Southern Gothic from the way I looked at it. Did did you have a particular theme in mind for how that was going to look and feel? Did How long did it take to discover that?
The idea of a kind of a gothic quality was something that was in the design. Was also in the storytelling approach. A sort of mixing of a fairy tale quality with elements of horror, elements of mystery, kind of like psychosexual, elements as well. So it's really trying to. I love films that have a mashup of genres, and mashup of elements that that work together well. I think Guillermo del Toro does this excellently. With films with some of his films, where he sort of mashups gothic love story with horror, with fairy tale, you know, um, and so it's really an attempt to kind of um, find a way in and to smuggle in ideas, um, into the story, into these stories, and to
It's
try to give something, try to create a unique world, and just a bold, unique world. I mean, I wasn't that interested in shooting a cell phone or seeing people sitting in front of a computer, or it's not a digital world. It's not an AI world. It's a very analog world that we wanted to create.
I love it. The actual world feels so lived in, which is something that's hard to pull off. I feel like so many filmmakers kind of missed that mark. What was the relationship like on set between these two amazing actors? Cecil and Fannie have such a the energy between them is unbelievable. What was that like on set?
It was amazing to watch these two young actresses. They, I didn't have a chance to give them to do a chemistry read between them. I cast them separately and brought them together, and we shot the film in Belgium. And so, the first time them coming together, I was nervous. I didn't know if the chemistry would work. But the first time I saw them together and had them read together, I was relieved because they both brought they both own the characters and they both brought ideas. And as a filmmaker, you kind of hand over the characters to the actresses, to the performers. And I try not to mess it up with my direction if I can help it. Just help, be a kind of guide and a kind of audience to help shape the performances and the story and the characters.
I still think about your film Brother all the time. It stuck with me for ages. I still think about it as one of the best films of that year by far. I'm curious what you hope that people take away from seeing this film.
Still Away is a very different film than Brother. I was really trying to, Brother is about a more, I guess, naturalistic film. It's a much more, in some ways, all the films are make or personal, but that film, Brother, is a much more biographical film in terms of my own experiences as an immigrant coming to Canada. And Steal Away was attempt to make something that was bold, that was, Brother's a very kind of, the kind of male energy in it. I was trying to like find a much more female energy with the Steal Away, and something that was less formal. Well, Brother was a much more kind of considered formal film where Steal Away is a little bit more shaggy, in terms of the ideas and the approach, and to not have such a tight grip on the story. Just experiment, just kind of like follow all the aesthetic ideas and story ideas I was feeling at that time.
It's miraculous because I think a lot of films miss having some mystery, and I think you've really delved into the mystery of the story. I'm curious, when you were working with the script, did you have any feedback in that time frame to then bring it to screen, or was it really just fully formed?
No, I mean, there's always people that, respond to what you do, respond to the script. And I think you mentioned mystery. I think mystery is essential to story. Mystery and suspense. Hitchcock laid down the template for us. Which is you have to, as a filmmaker, there's a kind of question that's is at heart, and a mystery at the heart of the story that you hopefully the audience will go on a ride with you, to kind of have that sense of inevitability that just how the story turns out. Part of my job as a storyteller is to keep you, make a promise to you, and to keep you watching, to keep you in it, and to hopefully have some kind of effect. And I like films that linger, films that affect me and make me think about them. Like what are their ideas? What did that mean? What did that imagery mean? I love films like that. And I don't know if that's old fashioned or out of vogue these days.
No, I totally agree with you. The last thing I got to ask is, what do you think of the state of Canadian filmmaking today? You've been through a number of years of it. I'm curious where you think it's headed and how you think it's going right now.
I think the state of Canadian cinema is healthy. Just in the past few years, I was asked recently to create my top 10 Canadian films of all time, and it kind of forced me to kind of go back and look at the last 100 years of cinema and the last 100 years of Canadian cinema, and to kind of see film, just the national cinema, the film, the kind, I remember when I first came to Canada, I was in class and we would watch these NFB documentaries. That's how I got my sense of my first sense of, and the teacher put on a 60 millimeter film and we watched, these like NFB animation or documentaries. And when I went to film school, I went to the Canadian Film Center, which was set up by Norman Jewison, was my mentor. And I have a poster of David Cronenberg's The Fly on my wall. I was lucky enough to be a part of the '90s new wave of Toronto filmmakers. Like there's people like Patricia Rozema and Adam McGowan and Peter Medler and Deepa Mehta. And I was also part of the generation that traveled this film circuit with some of the Quebecois filmmakers, like Denis Villeneuve and Jean-Marc Vallée. And when I was in film school, I saw Liolo by Jean-Claude Lauzon. So, I think the state of Canadian cinema is quite healthy. And I'm excited to see what, we do over the next few decades.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure chatting. The film is amazing. I can't wait to talk about your next project.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.